planning for parts obsolescence on your classic Mercedes. I got a great email from one of our subscribers and Patreons who has a E300 asking me what parts he should buy to prepare for parts obsolescence. And, you know, this is a very good question, because if you have a Mercedes that you drive every day and you don't know really what to do about certain parts not being available, well, it's a good idea to start planning and coming up with a solution. Now, I think that the number one thing all of us should do, and this is something that I try to do too, is speak to as many people at Mercedes Benz Classic and MBUSA. You know, try to keep asking for a part. If you request and request and request and they get enough requests, they will make a part. So let's say that we need the, that's a good example. Let's say that 100 of us who own 123 series cars need steering wheels, because, you know, the steering wheel tends to get loose in the top. If we unanimously and constantly request for Mercedes to make a run of steering wheels per se, there's a greater chance of that wheel going back into production than there is, say, a wheel going back into production if we don't make it. Another thing that Mercedes looks at is the sales data for a very specific part. So like if you look at the belt set for a or for an M117 5.6 liter engine, the chances of those belts being discontinued is pretty slim because there's high sales volume. So what you want to do is encourage people who have those cars to buy the Mercedes part. Not only will you find that sometimes these parts are reasonably priced, but they actually do work better than, say, a Gates belt. So encouraging people to actually buy the parts that exist is a good place to start. I find not enough people actually reach out to Mercedes and buy stuff. So this is a good way to proactively prevent parts obsolescence. So if you are trying to collect parts for an obsolescence scenario, the first thing you need to remember is that the part always exists somewhere. Somebody has it. I know somebody's going to follow up my sentence with, until it doesn't anymore, but this is a problem I have to solve almost every day. There's always a part somewhere that works. So you need to look at the parts that are not available for your car. For example, if you have a 300 SDL, a radiator, then look at the alternatives in the market, and then start searching for parts that actually may work in the car. So if I have a 300 SDL and I need a radiator, I could either buy a Chinese radiator that's made of aluminum from Brinson Company and plan on maybe buying an extra one, or I can scour the globe for a Bear radiator, you know, or I can contact Bear and say, why don't you make this anymore? It's a threefold approach. Another item that I might, let's see here, what's another item to bring up? The evaporator. If you have a 126 series car and you think you might need an evaporator one day, you get the part number for it and you start looking for it. Now, I look at each item that I'm replacing as a job, so I try to take into account every part I'm going to need and I start looking for it ahead of time. Now, when you're in my shoes and you're trying really hard to find parts that sometimes do not exist to complete customers' cars, you want to start looking weeks ahead of time. So if you know that your car may need a part soon and it's an NLA part, you need to start looking for that part and locating it before it fails, not when it fails. You also need to look at your resources. Mercedes shops near you that have been in business for a long time. Individuals that sell parts, you know, NOS parts, like HMC Mercedes is a good example. My friend Hedary has a massive NOS parts inventory, and he has some great stuff. And about half the time when I need an NOS part, he has it, you know, listed on his website, clear as day. Another great resource is, another question you need to ask yourself is the part I need available as a rebuilt unit? So sometimes with a steering box or a fuel distributor, this might be the case. You don't have to rely on finding an NOS item. Now, a second part of this question that a lot of people ask me is, does this mean I shouldn't own a classic Mercedes because there are some parts that may not be available? Now, this is a funny question because a lot of it depends on the skill and luck and the interchangeability of certain parts with other cars. I have mixed emotions about answering this question because I recognize that there's some cars that are going to be a massive challenge to keep on the road. Now, surprisingly, the pre-72 stuff, the answer is a resounding, you should own the car because parts availability for those cars is quite good. When you start getting into cars like the 124 and the 201, it doesn't mean you shouldn't, but it means things are going to be a challenge. Now, 123 series cars where stuff is much more durable, where you could take a climate control actuator that is obsolete and rebuild it instead of having to take the whole dash apart and dig it out and wonder who's got one. You can actually get by pretty well with those cars. You may not be able to find a dashboard, a glove box latching mechanism, but SJS Car Styling makes seat springs for it, so you don't have to get a whole new driver's seat. The trick with some of these older models is to look at not the entire part, but the smaller parts that it is made of, and figure out where you can get or salvage or create or rebuild or whatever these smaller parts. Key word. Let's look at the cruise control amplifiers. You can't get a cruise control amp, but the circuit boards never really go bad. And you can get all the electronic parts to rebuild the circuit board, because it's not like a modern Mercedes from the 2000s where the cruise control unit is coded to the VIN number. The car doesn't care what cruise control unit you put in. It just cares that all the electro caps and gateways all work. And this is something where I find that as Mercedes-Benz products age, often people from the aftermarket will come in to support the older product. For example, if you have a 124 with a bad wiring harness, MKB Tech will take your old harness and actually rebuild the harness in a way where it's durable and will last. If you have a W140 series car, which I don't particularly care for, I'd say maybe this isn't the greatest car to try to keep on the road, and in top running condition for the next 30 or 40 years. But if you choose to do that, there are certain parts on the car that are more rebuildable than, say, a 220 S-Class, such as the vacuum locking control module or the electronic unit for the climate control. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you found it useful, please let me know in the comments so that I can keep making content like this. And if you have your own story of Mercedes parts obsolescence or a part that's not available that you discovered a source for, something like that, let us know so that you can help other Mercedes-Benz owners. And in the meantime, thanks for watching, and don't give up. There's always a solution to parts obsolescence. See you guys in the future.